Hi, Corner. This is a long time coming, I think. The meaning to do is for hi. In light of a estuary, pre-recorded estuary, I was on this Neil Daedalus today, actually, the date of this reporting, too. Talking about friendship. I figured at some point, sooner than later, I would get my friend Christian here on to the channel. I was thinking about this beforehand, but just some of the conversation and talks that came up in this estuary, I was like, damn, we got to do this soon. And lo and behold, I happened to be in the area and I was able to end up here with Christian. So welcome to your house, I guess. This is not my space. This is my favorite room. My favorite room. So anyway, without further ado, we're gonna do this TLC style per usual. We'll take it from there. So you can go as little as much as you want. Tell us about the home you grew up in.
Okay. So first, Chin, always a pleasure to have you. Ah, so a home I grew up in. Uh, I guess the first thing that really comes to mind when asked a question like that is just the fact that I had a good childhood. My mom and my dad both worked multiple jobs. My dad was a firefighter. My mom did odd end kind of jobs. She worked at restaurants. Um, at some point Verizon Frontier. So yeah, we had pretty tight knit grouping for what turned out to be the five of us. So my mom, my dad, and myself, then two brothers that I had adamantly wished for. I anticipated their arrival. One of which is he's one of my favorite people on the planet. So I hope that I kind of chums the waters for friendship. But yeah, we had a good childhood. Grew up in a, um, middle class neighborhood. Uh, didn't start attending church uh, regularly. I would say until middle school. I attended public school um, up until, strangely enough, the eighth grade. So for the eighth and ninth grade, I actually went to a private school. For me, it was like being in seminary. I took it very seriously. Uh, So yeah, I guess my first religious experience really involved um, my dad telling me um, that God was with me. That God was with me. I was afraid of the dark, and he made that very. It was a nightly thing. In fact, though we were, some would say, nominal, we did pray together as a family every night, and the power of the spoken word. It was rhetorical. We had a huge um, prayer that we had memorized, and we would actually go through "God bless Grandpa, God bless Grandma," all the way through, like, the extended family. So no, we had a good childhood. I can't complain.
So you had a good childhood. You kind of grew up in the church. Um, well, for private school, I guess, right?
Yeah, that had a huge impact on me. Uh, it was quite a distance from our home, so it was about a 40-minute drive um, to and from. And I think that first year I was alone. My brothers were not enrolled. It was like if first grade through 12th. Yeah, I think they brought you all the way to graduation. So that first year I was on my own. Second year they came. And yeah, having Christian teachers, many of whom actually, I don't want to say they gave their testimonies, but they were quite open about their struggles, um, some of their dreams. Um, there was one coach, I'll never forget, who was single and kind of walked us through, like, being single man at his age, just by example, opposite by example. So yeah, it played a huge factor. We had science books. We did, geography, economics, English, but the curriculum, I couldn't tell you who wrote it or how, but it did. It was all very much from a Christian worldview. Um, so there was a big shock for me when I actually went back to school for 10th grade and caught up with um, an entire generation of kids that I had gone through elementary, middle school, and finished high school with. So yeah, it's very informative. Really primed my mind, I think, looking back, to resist all our fees.
So we went to private school for what was it, 2 years?
I just went 2 years. My brothers went the whole. Yeah.
So do you finish out high school? What was that like
Uh,
in public school? Just what you feel.
I don't remember much, I guess you could say, of my time in high school that I care remember. Um, I did have two friends, uh, that kind of instilled a love for reading that I would love to see them again just to thank them for that. But yeah, it was like anybody else's, struggling with my place, not just in academics, wanting to, you know, uh, walk away from academics, right? I had no idea that that could potentially play a part in your adult life. Um, because again, generationally speaking, you know, we were told, work hard, go to school, and you'll do well. I wasn't the best student. So I ended up ultimately becoming a lifeguard, and me into my dad actually helped get me a job at the hospital. And then I eventually became a nurse. Okay. So yeah, um, I'm very forgiving towards myself when I think back to that time. But I don't have any contact with people um, from yeah, that chapter lodge. Yeah.
Okay. So where do you want to pick up then? So you went through high school, not much necessarily reflecting there. You hit young adult, I guess, out on your own. And then when did you I guess probably because we'll end up talking more about it, church stuff. When did you really start getting into that, taking that super seriously? You had your formative experiences with your dad in some way, as nominal as it might have been. And then your 2 years in private school, right? So when was kind of the next big, perhaps like spiritual, religious, Christian kind of moment for you? Manisa.
Um, I guess it would be my time at college at USF. Um, I went in not really knowing, to be quite honest with you, what I wanted to do or how it worked or what was needed to succeed. But I did notice the contrast between, kind of curriculum and the attitude towards God, the supernatural, metaphysical. Um, it was very much from like whatever materialist perspective. Um, yeah, I was kind of enthralled by Roman Catholicism. People like Chesterton, Tolkien, Scott Hahn at the time is very uh, popular. Was the height of his sort of publications for laity.
Yeah.
Um, I was really drawn in by the high church, liturgy, mass, um, and that wool was kind of endless. Even with their catechism, it was huge. It was just a massive world, and yeah. So in a way, I did. I converted. I went to do RCIA. I had sponsors, lovely sponsors. Is it that actually? Um, this was so long ago. I don't know if they would still be living, but yeah, I wanted the aroma. I wanted that tactile, uh, the desire to be very much. in the Mass and at the mercy for the Eucharist. But even that was very much kind of a lonely venture. Um, and in retrospect, because I've obviously, uh, I don't want to say changed, but I've undergone various changes since that time. But yeah, um, I would say I went church hopping, but so far in my lifetime, I've been to various different, I guess you could say, branches, loosely of the faith. I've been to like Greek Orthodox service, Roman Catholicism, Pentecostal, uh, non-denominational. So yeah, I guess in my time in the Roman Catholic Church, I did pick up on a sense of I guess what we would call, I did get a hint of with apologetics because it's got bond. Yeah. At the time I was actually for various reasons heavily involved in group therapy, and there was a psychotherapist who just so happened to be Roman Catholic, and really helped pull me through that particular time in my life. Not that there was anything wicked or pressing, but I did find a lot of mercy and acceptance and learn so much. And sadly, that provider, I don't know that he still if it's together. Yeah, but yeah. So if anything, there's this works based exposure that I became that familiarized myself with it during that time. Yeah.
All right. So from there, you've got the Roman Catholic experience. Did you continue? How long did that continue through? And how long were you kind of baptized in that tenant world?
Um, I mean, I would flock to mass and adoration quite a bit. Um, so it wasn't until in the hospital there was provider, a mid level, who very gently was just sort of started questioning. Um, I guess what it amounts to is the order of salvation. What does that look like? How does that occur? And he kind of turned me on to various, I know what you like to call them, pastors, theologians, like John MacArthur, R.C. Sproul, um, John Piper. So,
So you're living in a very kind of Catholic space, more or less grew up in that. There's a framing for that. Is that right?
yeah, Hunt Church.
Yeah, or a high church frame. So then now, is this when? Because we didn't say anything. Is this when you're in the ER and doing that stuff? Did this happen?
Yeah, yeah. So I was exposed to a lot of stuff during my time in the emergency room, both for which I'm grateful, and uh, I'd miss it, and at the same time, I'm definitely glad to be away. Uh, Sometimes, you know, the description or the characteristic, that people mention is a trauma junkie, like an adrenaline junkie. I wasn't that. In fact, I kind of felt like my dad actually placed me there. Um, he was a firefighter, and I guess his expectations of me were to excel academical. Yeah. Um, I think I was on a fast track to more of like the bohemian sort of poetic side of it, not so much the academic medical side of it. So, um, yeah, becoming an EMT, becoming a nurse, being placed in the ER, uh, just gave me some big doses of reality, real life. Um, and so through this particular individual who was a mentor to me, um, I was introduced to a very, very small community. Uh, One individual, for example, was Jewish and he was Messianic. He celebrated the Passover. And I guess at that time, when I it when it occurred to me, it was explained to me, you have these festivals um, that modern evangelicals almost, I wouldn't say of ignorant of, but right, that Jesus himself not only models, shadows, participates. and scripture itself makes it a point of his attending these various things. Like, you can still participate in them today. So this one particular family, through their Seder or Passover Seder, uh, that was a game changer. That was definitely a game changer. And then at the time, I was still very much wanted to travel the world. So I had my sights set on Japan and ended up uh, praying about it and felt very convicted. And I ended up going to Israel to stay. And that was another, I guess you could say, advancement in my understanding of the scripture, uh, understanding large swaths of scripture, especially the Old Testament. Just it all made sense. Um, and yeah, I guess I began to take a lot for granted at that time and figured that there was so much good teaching um, online and through the web that I didn't really feel compelled to actually attend a church at that time. I guess you could say it's kind of like the discovery of autonomy as an adult. I guess everyone has to undergo that to some extent as a thinker, right? You have to think for yourself at some point in your life. Um, yeah, I would not attend church at that time. And so after the pandemic, I ended up leaving the ER and settling on a clinic. Met that clinic, met a lovely one of the employees, was just a wonderful woman, who in turn, she and her husband introduced us to a local church, and that's where I.
Yeah, all right. Now we're kind of to something that I can know about. So this was, gosh, probably, oh man, December of 2022. And technically sooner than that because I had come in and dropped in the Sunday school you were sitting in at the time from a mutual friend. I had seen you just kind of from afar, just once. There was not a Sunday school that I was going to at the time where something was going on. And so I'd seen you maybe once. But it was, yeah, it was right before Christmas and I just sang something. I was doing special music at the time. And, uh, and I did not really I like doing that stuff, but that's not something I did very frequently. So for a time, we used to joke, and it would be like, this is it. This is a big deal. I just got to go up and sing. So all the church ladies would be like, oh, you're going to do more singings. So I did that. And you came up and you opened pretty much like, that was really great. By the way, have I ever said that you kind of look like Byron Herbert Reece?
Yeah. This
This books on the shelf.
oh yeah, no, darn. This interview is brought to you by Byron Herbert Reece. So if you're unaware, he was an Appalachian poet who wrote just 4 volumes of poetry.
He wrote a novel too, right?
Wrote 2 novels. They are on the shelf.
Oh,
He was a Christian and very much suffered towards the end of his life. Depression, loneliness, never married, took care of his parents. They had tuberculosis. He caught tuberculosis and decided that taking a bullet to the infected lung was his only way out. So yeah, on one of those traveling adventures, I ended up going to Young Harris College, and without so much as any academic credit whatsoever to my name, they shuttled me to a room with his personal library at the time of his death.
wow.
And I took out a pen and paper, and I mean, just frantically trying to write down the titles. And they said, don't worry about that. We'll give you, itemized list of the books. So yeah, I felt a really close, intimate affinity with Byron Herbert Reece, his poetry. So he wrote in the vein of like Faulkner, and his poetry was very much those old Southern ballads, but at a time when the beatniks were just, I mean, taking over control of the culture. So Ginsberg and Kerouac. Yeah, he was forgotten. He was forgotten. So yeah, I went to Blood Mountain again, the very beginning of the Appalachian Trail. Zimmerman, there was a U.S. Georgian senator who had stories of growing up with him.
Really?
And they would actually, like they were out canoeing on creeks and lakes and rivers. And so when you read his poetry, what people say about John Bunyan, how he bled, he had a being, right? Blood, same is said of like Sturgeon, where he can take anything and just this smoldering love, this passion of scripture. That's what he paints with. That's what he speaks with. It just pours out of his mouth. His poetry is like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, 4 volumes, Season of the Flesh, Ballad of the Bones, which I'm convinced that Nick Cave. So Nick Cave is a British recording artist. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. This is another shout out to him. I'm convinced that Nick Cave, he did an album called Murder Ballads. That's not enough to go off of. Academically, you gotta push, you gotta show like more. But I'm convinced that during one of his American tours, he probably picked up some of these volumes. Um, so yeah, Murder Ballads is it's not for the kiddies. It's not for the kids. It's probably his most grotesque work.
Yeah.
Um, but Stagger Lead, please don't look that up. Very grotesque. But I'm convinced that not his love for violence, because people, challenge Quentin Tarantino all the time. You love violence. No. Cormac McCarthy does the same thing.
Yeah.
Violence can be used in this particular medium to progress a point or theme. Okay. So nobody means to hurt anybody. But yeah, his a lot of his stuff was very dark. And it's wonderful. His novels didn't do so well, but again, I think he was really shooting for a Faulkner type audience or tools. He was trying to use the same tools as Faulkner and Hemingway, and nobody can blame him. Nobody can blame him. But his books did not do that well. I think his books were great for 2 novels. I'm so sorry. It's in the heretical library. So this is my Orthodox library. I have a heretical library on the Osadia house, but I don't have those volumes of poetry or those 2 novels. But yeah, they're worth looking up. They're definitely worth looking up. In fact, if you're hungry for a thesis, Byron Herbert Reece is ripe for the picking.
Yeah.
In the valley in which he lived, locals refurbished the family home.
Yeah.
So you can go there today, and have a really nice little experience. So yeah, you reminded me after your astounding
Singing my performance, Casting Crowns interpretation of I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. Yeah.
listen, this man could take anything and make it golden. Okay. It's true. So yeah, you reminded me of that sort of Lincoln-esque, the sound and just the tone. You don't get that too often. No.
So this is how Christian introduced himself. And then from there, I think we stood in the foyer while everybody was like, after service, you just kind of, ideally you yap and you discuss and you talk and you make your lunch plans. You probably stood there for a good like hour and a half.
Yeah.
I think like the music director of the time was like ready to go. He had the keys to like kick us out. We had to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
That day.
I felt like I was gushing over you. I had never met someone that it's like seeing the embodiment of work, right? It's like seeing, and it's something I was like, had been reading him up to that point, or he was fresh in my mind. You literally just, invoked that whole, what we just went through.
So from there, we just started talking about, I think we kind of just went like laundry list survey of things. Like Lewis would say in Before Loves, right, that philea, friendship, often is predicated initially on that. What? No way. You thought this too? No, nobody. I never thought somebody would think this way. You have the same view, right? Shared vision, as Lewis, I think, would maybe, or would be the best way to summarize that. I think we very quickly found a lot of shared interests. right? We both had a background in a lot of Western comics and like our
Yeah.
manga, some video game stuff. Like we kind of hit all the boxes.
Yeah, we do. We checked all the boxes. Lewis met a friend, a lifelong friend named Arthur Greaves, and their love of mythology, particularly, Norse, this isn't anything like unique, lasted their lifetimes. Yeah. Yeah. I forgot who outlived who, but they remained, at the very least, good, compatible friends of all life. Yeah.
I remember too at the time we swapped numbers on home, and he started texting me a bunch of book recommendations. Of which I think I'd only like started maybe two of them. Admittedly, it would.
No, I've learned about you particularly. You're not keen on sci-fi recommendations or fantasy recommendations, but you have a natural bedrock for Arthurian legend, and you may very well have already read all the foundational basics.
I've surveyed most of them. I probably haven't read everything in its entirety.
And one of my fears, as well as Malcolm White, hashtag Sir Galahad and the Grail. Get on that. Get on that. Is that Arthur will be forgotten. That a lot of these, you know, with it, not even counting Canterbury Tales and things like that, but just this medieval chivalry, the Golden Chain of Command, all of these ways to look at the world, might be lost.
Yeah.
And today's, I wouldn't say society, but zeitgeist.
Yeah.
Is definitely nowhere near those principles, guiding principles when it comes to nature and hashtag Martin Shaw.
Everybody knows Martin. Martin Shaw's very familiar.
I hope so. I hope so.
So I need to read more Shaw. I gotta finish Literature's a while. That's a different story. So
Yeah, sometimes you pick something up, you interact with it, and it just it does it for you for a time, and you fall off the path, but it's still worthwhile. It's still necessary.
yeah. So I remember we had texted, and I went home, and I remember you sending book recommendations, and at the same time, my grandmother was. We were talking, and I was like, "Yeah, still looking to like make friends. It's still very early into like figuring out things." While I was here in this area at the time, I was only. It was 2022. Yeah, I was only 2 years into living here, and I was in a rough spot in college at the time. And I remember my grandmother being like, "Well, I'm just gonna pray that you find like your Jonathan or your David." However, that ended up working. I remember at the time writing, probably having my journal, that I think I found him. I think I found him in you before I even kind of really figured you out. So we had a couple other encounters. One of the things that had come up in this, and then we can really just open this up to like church stuff if you really want to, or friendship, because they can go both ways or you go either way, like both and.
Yeah, if we do, you're not safe. You at home watching right now, you're not safe at home. Just making you aware. Full disclosure. Full disclosure.
So at the time, our former church's young adult group was in this weird transition phase. Its previous leaders that I was under for maybe a year had left, and our associate pastor at the time was doing that and running the youth ministry and doing a lot of other spinning other plates. I had taken up in some respect on my own, just volunteered the responsibilities to help teach or run. And it was kind of piloting it. People were slowly coming back in. But then our pastor had, without, I think either he had seen the potential between the two of us or seen it with you, and then saw the both of us just kind of interacting already, had made a proposition from both of us that we become or start like leaders of the group. Probably that March. Like it was pretty quick after that. For whatever reason, you were invited to lunch with him, like you and your wife, and then I ended up just hanging along because I didn't have anything better to do, and so we ended up at Cheddar's, I think, and that was where the proposition for leading the group happened. And then pretty quickly after that, we got thrown right in to running our middle group.
So if we weren't good friends already, Yeah, we got even closer with this venture. Yeah, and I have to say, you taught me how to teach because I had a lot in my head. And I always say of this experience, I think the pastor just wanted an adult, a vetted adult present at these, you know, classes, meetings, whatever you like to call them. But yeah, I learned so much from you that it really became, um, I wouldn't call it a business model, but it really was like a teaching model. You know, the whole like, there's always two.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's follow. I want to actually roll with that. So I guess first kind of condition per se, one of the things that got brought up, go watch Neil's Estuary about the friendship thing. It's really good. One of the things that got brought up is that long suffering is necessary for friendship. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that very quickly we both kind of had to endure that and figure things out. The young adult group was already very transitory in nature. It was never consistent. Um, and that's the nature of it. Some people are fresh out of high school going into college, and then some are on the elder end, starting families, becoming young professionals, etc. And so there's not a lot of consistency throughout,
No.
by any means. And one of the other troubles that kind of continued to be ran across, I brought it up before, so this isn't anything new per se in the channel, is a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape, and a lot of
Yeah.
weird management and leadership stuff that we at the time and probably continue to just had to like muddle through. Honestly, neither of us had any experience doing any of this before.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was just like, all right, we did this thing. This was met with this response. Okay, well, let's try this. Met with this response. It was a lot of trial and error
A lot.
early on.
Probably more so than should have been. I don't know how much of that is the experience of normal or larger church, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
church teachers. But yeah, church government essentially. That's what it boils down to was not a lack of church government, but
And like a weird history in that building too that needed to
yeah,
we needed to get over, which was weird. There was a pre-existing group that had tried to like create its own little thing apart from the rest of the body, and that was a problem. All of those people had left after that.
yeah.
And then, but it took place in our building. There was a little
I,
like house on property that we used to be in, which was a good walk from the rest of the campus if you outside. So
yeah.
it was very you could get isolated over there, and there was a lot of apprehension, I think, unfounded, per se.
Well, that was one of our main points from the start, is we anticipated that. Yeah, and we encouraged uh what would you call them? Our members to participate in the larger body.
Yeah.
And I think at some point along that venture, you and I agreed the enemy is nihilism. That's the one thing that we wanted to address more than anything else.
Yeah.
Was don't give up. Like you know that became a passion. I think towards the very end, especially. Yeah. So what can we share? What can we teach to bolster, to prophylactic,
Yeah.
like to keep them away from nihilism, from giving up, from walking away. Yeah.
Well, it was that, and it was literacy, like biblical literacy. That was kind of the other one. Christian will say that I set like a model for teaching and how to present, and that was just kind of my with the with itness that you have or the intuition as a teacher and some of my education. But what Christian gave to me in that time was a far better appreciation for the Old Testament, specifically life of Abraham. Um, Independent of the Peterson stuff, I had not really listened to the Genesis lectures,
Neither had I.
and I was not particularly interested in doing that. I liked some of Peterson's political stuff at the time. Probably, I was listening to him 2 years, like in 2020, 2021, 22. So he's already out of the picture and not doing anything at the time. I was just kind of listening where I could to some of that. But Christian gave me a real appreciation for Life of Abraham, and then kind of probably helped open the gates to some of the text and individuals I ended up finding later in reading. So, and I hope that some of that in elite. I mean, if nobody else, I got a lot out of it you were presenting. And we were really intentional about it. We started in Genesis, it'll be 13,
Yeah.
up through, we got up right before Joseph, right?
I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew, and I still believe, that the life of Abraham is essential, quintessential to understanding Christ. He is the seed of Abraham. Yeah. Uh, Hagar and Sarah. You don't get that. You're missing, a lot. So yeah, that was the golden age. Well, I wouldn't say that was the golden age. That was the catalyst.
It was. We had a pretty we had budding root at the time. We had to find our groove. We weren't in our building normally Sunday mornings. That was the other thing. We were doing Sundays and Mondays. Um, maybe as the aside before we kind of get into that, like the whole like rule of two is really, I think that was the other takeaway we had, was that ministry endeavors, something like that, some sort of project, kind of really is best done in pairs at least.
Accountability, reading the room,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
behind the scenes support and structure. Yeah, it was a great time.
There was a lot of meetings at Red Robin, and no, it's probably the one where we'd sit and just kind of debrief and figure stuff out.
Well, we actually debriefed after every single.
We did, yeah. I call you
Yeah.
on the road home as just a quick initial response to what was happening in the room at the time.
Huh.
So there was a lot there. Yeah, a lot was suffered in that time. A lot was learned. So we had a really good golden age, and we had some members of the church where we were really close with that would help and support dinners. We had that meeting in, and that was really when things grew. And that was a really sweet time. Hospitality was on demonstration every Monday night. A very model, very good framework for a really solid marriage was seen in the hosts every week with a lot of wisdom and advice under their belt.
It was a pocket of the supernatural.
Yeah.
It was a vacuum. That I hate to say, I don't know if we'll ever see that again in our lifetimes.
Maybe not. Those were really good days. We were firing on a lot of cylinders in spite of ourselves, in spite of what was going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, leadership and the red tape and I guess politics, lowercase p politics of like the church and just ambitions killed it all after a certain point. It's kind of not a long time coming per se, but
No. And I'll hit the pause button for a second. And speaking of Lewis, he was asked, for example, at some point in his life, I think it was after I think when he was ill, he had a lot of speaking engagements, and he was asked by a priest, an Anglican priest, to write a book addressing the modern ails, you know, impediments and stumbling blocks during that time. And he just, was like, where are my successors? I'm tired. I've done my part. Where are my successors? So I guess I'm saying that, going back a little bit, trying to kind of tie things together in a way. I had never heard of Jordan Peterson.
yeah.
And yet what we did, and so I am not seminary trained or anything,
Either am I. So
to my shame. However, the university library, I would go and just pull commentaries from the shelf and just, okay, we're on chapter 14, 5 different commentaries, condense, and present. And you were instrumental in helping me, really get through that. Because talk about having a tool that you just don't know how to use, or it's too heavy to lift. Your boy Henry pulled the sword from the stove. Henry's Galahad, in case you don't know.
I'm gonna change my profile picture.
Put some respect on this man. So, yes, we went through a lot, and just like Screwtape Letters, I really believe that a lot of that was not the desire of church leadership. Yeah, I think that there may have been, principalities, whatever, working through all of us to just basically ultimately kind of dissolve. Yeah. And I think that that's how a lot of I hesitate to use the word ministry, uh, but I think that's how a lot of groups end up disbanding or suffering loss. But yeah, it was a fantastic time.
We had a period where we learned like 3 different card games.
Yeah.
After the Golden Age, that was kind of the first, like the Bronze Age. We played. You learned like 3 games.
Well, I got to say, to go back a little bit, it's true. Henry and I were teaching Sunday mornings before main service and Monday nights in what was known at the time as YAMS, yeah, Adult Ministries. Um, we were both employed full time. Yeah, we are not clergy. We are laypersons doing our very best to know the passage of scripture before we present it inside and out to the best of our ability. Oh, what's going on here?
Oh, a little bad me. All right, back.
So we were laypersons doing our best to really give accurate, true information and description in that transmission of knowledge. We were very much concerned that it was real.
Yes.
Uh, Not just applicable, but real and historical. And yeah, we both had full-time jobs, uh, no training whatsoever, autodidactable methods or tools. Yeah. That was the means through which we were able to, unearth various, you know, in a knowledge base that I guess we'll get to it at some point.
Sure. Well, we read. I feel like a lot of my lessons were honestly just what I would have wanted to study and read. Was reading really broadly at the time, just across very different spaces.
And it was so incredible because you were able to cue people in to certain arguments, whether it's the new perspective or is he in the bread? You were able to ask questions that didn't necessarily merit an answer at that point in time, but you were basically introducing them to the palette of colors and questions and inquiries in a way that we now know why wasn't necessarily through other expressions. Yeah. But yeah, you would do outlines. Sometimes you would read verbatim. And as a little shout out to the corner, um, ultimately you ended up, instituting estuary as a means to drive discussion and get a bunch of young men and women in a room using estuary as a way of just unpacking what's on their minds. Pity? No, forget it. That was fire. Mr. Vanderclay, God bless you, sir. God bless you. Although he would say I didn't make up estuary.
Yeah, right.
So
And it's like a collaborative effort. There's a history to it.
all of you, thank you.
Estuary helped stave off some of the burnout we were feeling too.
Yes.
We lost the dinners at that point.
Yeah.
And we were in a weird spot where we were just kind of playing card games Sunday nights and trying our best with, we weren't doing Sunday mornings either at that time. And so we had dropped everything down to Mondays. Our associate pastor had left, and then we were kind of left to our own devices, for better or for worse, which we didn't really do anything ambitious, nor do we want to under that leadership either. But
No. Well, we did have some outreach ministry. There was, yeah, some projects, home improvement sorts of things that it wasn't all just theoretical. We church grounds cleanup, things like that. I'd like to say that we did see improvement in certain people's lives. I know we did. I know we do. At the end of the day, that's what we cared about most too, was to stave off nihilism and to make sure that these individuals knew the love of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
In a real personal way. And yeah.
We won't get into detail, but we hit a point where something happened and I had it definitely, where I kind of just looked in the mirror and I was like, I'm not qualified to do this. Partly because we read so much, knowledge is kind of a curse. And I think at that point, we really started getting into church history, like church history, not just reading broadly, not just pulling from the US Ed library, but we started going to creeds, catechisms, and those foundations and the requirements, expectations, conduct necessary, as deemed both by a lot of letters of Hall, and then even then by those in church history, whether that's before the Protestant Reformation or after. And we kind of both are just like, what are we doing? Why are we allowed to do this?
Yeah.
I had that big time. And that was when I guess we both individually had decided to step down on youth. Things had already very much petered out. Estuary was kind of the only reason why people were coming in that point. People were not showed up to our lessons anymore. Those who were left. Some of it was life circumstances. A lot of our core members had gotten older and had kids, and that completely changed their lifestyle, understandably. And then some work stuff too. It kept people from coming, which is natural. But we were really bare bones by the end, and then some stuff had happened. We were just, all right, I guess this is it. And we left. All right, mini rant. All right, my iPhone decides it needs to save a video every time you put it in a different chat is beyond me. And it doesn't show up in your photos like that. So I'm running out of space on my phone for this. So we're going to try and land a plane, I guess. What's this?
So I was simply saying that during your time with Neil at his bonfire in New Orleans, your discussion with him, I vicariously processed, a lot of those experiences and feelings and pains. Thank you, Neil. Thank you. That bonfire is still burning in my heart. One of these days, we'll meet.
So I'm trying to do with this. That's the goal. It gets you in here. So
anyway.
So yeah, now here we are. And we're kind of in really weird spots post church ministry. We did that for pretty much the entire duration of our initial friendship. Most of our time together has been doing that. And so but it's not the thing that's not what it's predicated on, which is really nice because in other circumstances.
No, it's not as if I worked at this job, I'm leaving, I'm never talking to you again.
Yeah.
No, in fact, by the grace of God, we've remained very good, close friends. It's been a salve as well as accelerant, spiritually. So yeah, I don't know if we're still in the desert.
I don't know. But I've decided I need to just stop using those terms to describe stages of life.
I felt that too.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, I felt that too. It's in it to be dangerous.
You can't.
What's in a name? Quite a bit.
So I'm done. I don't know where we're at, but we're somewhere, and so.
Well, you've moved on. You've had a tremendous homecoming. I think that the prayers you were lifting up, had in fact largely, been answered.
Yeah.
So I'd like to think that you were there in part to fulfill a compass. Not just for that group, but also for me, selfishly. So, go land plane.
If you guys are interested in more content, stick around. I'd like to do more of these kind of interviews. It was my first rando for that, so that was fun.
Yeah. I hope the early childhood stuff wasn't too boring.
That's what people are here for. That's part of the rando's experience. So, I don't know. It's up to you if you want to get into this world and interact. If we find any benefit, I'm sure somebody will take an interest in you in the corners. So you see. But thanks for doing this spontaneously, might I add. Just kind of was like a spur of the moment decision while I was down here.
Yeah. Thank you for continuing to think about me, including in your wife. Likewise. That's about.
All right, we'll see you around.